Struggling single dad takes in pregnant teen. Left in the cold years later, she becomes his miracle. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I'm speaking to you from the deepest part of my heart because I am truly upset. I've been thinking about shutting down this channel. I work 16 to 18 hours a day, pouring my soul into every story, sacrificing my health, my time, and everything I have, just to bring you heartfelt, powerful content. But despite all this, I feel like most of my family members here are silent. YouTube isn't helping either. They keep pushing us down. And even though I've asked 1,000 times, many of you still haven't subscribed to your own channel, the real Mr. Peter Stories. Fake channels are using my name and voice. They're stealing our stories, and sadly, they're getting more love and attention than we are. If things continue like this for the next 10 days, you may never hear another word from Mr. Peter again. But for now, let's take a deep breath and begin today's story. Because no matter how heavy my heart feels, I still love you, my beautiful family. Bradford Dario navigated his beat-up pickup truck through the snow-covered streets of Detroit, exhaustion etched on his weathered face. At 42, life had dealt him more than his fair share of hardships. His wife Elaine had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, leaving him to raise their now 15-year-old son, Tyler, alone. The auto plant where he had worked for 18 years had recently downsized, forcing him to take on 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet. As Bradford turned onto his street, his headlights caught a huddled figure on a bench near the bus stop. Something made him slow down. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and the last bus had departed hours ago. Pulling over, he approached cautiously. "You all right?" he called out. The figure looked up, revealing a young woman's face, tear-streaked and frightened. She couldn't have been more than 18. Her dark brown skin appeared ashen in the cold, her breath coming out in short, visible puffs. "I'm fine," she replied, though her trembling voice betrayed her. "It's 15 degrees out here. Where are you headed? Can I call someone for you?" She shook her head, clutching her oversized coat tighter. "There's no one to call." Bradford noticed how she protectively cradled her midsection. She was pregnant, at least 6 months along from what he could tell. "I'm Bradford. I live just down the block. I've got a warm house and a spare room. No strings attached, just a place to get out of this cold for tonight." The young woman hesitated, sizing him up. Bradford stood patiently, understanding her caution. Finally, desperation won out over fear. "I'm Iris," she said softly. "Thank you." Chapter 2. Broken pieces. Iris Storm woke disoriented, momentarily panicked by the unfamiliar ceiling above her. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains she didn't recognize, casting patterns on walls that weren't the dingy beige of her stepfather's house. The events of the previous night came rushing back. The bus stop, the stranger's kindness, the warm meal, and this small room with its neatly made bed and boxes of a dead woman's belongings. She sat up carefully, one hand instinctively, cradling her swollen belly where her daughter kicked vigorously, apparently wide awake. "Good morning to you too," Iris whispered, the first genuine smile in days crossing her face as she felt the baby move. Whatever else had gone wrong in her life, this little one remained her anchor, her reason to keep fighting when giving up. Would have been easier. The digital clock on the nightstand read 8:17 a.m. Iris had slept nearly 10 hours, her exhausted body finally surrendering to rest in this temporary sanctuary. She listened for sounds in the house, hearing only the distant hum of the heating system and the occasional creak of old floorboards settling. Bradford and his son must have already left for work and school. Iris pulled herself up, her body aching, with the new weight distribution that made even simple movements challenging. The bathroom across the hall was small but clean, with mismatched towels hanging neatly, and a shower that, true to Bradford's warning, took several minutes to produce hot water. The mirror reflected a face Iris barely recognized. dark circles under her eyes, her usually vibrant brown skin dull with fatigue, her curly hair flattened on one side from sleep. At 19, Iris had never imagined this would be her life. Just a year ago, she'd been a sophomore at Wayne State, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time at the university library. The future had seemed wide open. Graduate school, perhaps law or education, a career that would make her late mother proud. Kayla Storm had raised Iris alone until Iris was 14, instilling in her daughter a fierce independence and hunger. For education, your mind is the one thing nobody can take from you, she'd say. Fill it with everything you can. Kayla's unexpected death from an aneurysm had been the first domino to fall. Within months, Iris's stepfather Vernon, a man who had married her mother more for financial stability than love, showed his true nature. The grief counselor at school called it emotional abuse. But to Iris, it was simply life. The constant criticism, the subtle undermining, the way he made their home feel like enemy territory. She had escaped to college, visiting home as rarely as possible, throwing herself into studies and work. Then came Marcus Jeffries, charming, ambitious, a third-year pre-law student who noticed her in the library and spent weeks convincing her to go out with him. Their relationship had moved quickly, intense, and all-consuming in the way only young love can be. When Iris discovered she was pregnant despite precautions, she'd been terrified, but certain they would face it together. Marcus had proven her wrong within 24 hours, backpedaling with breathtaking speed. "This isn't part of my plan," he'd said, as if her pregnancy were a scheduling conflict. "I can't be tied down with a kid. My future is set." He'd offered money for an abortion, and when Iris declined, he'd simply walked away, blocking her number and pretending she didn't exist when they passed on campus. By the time she began showing, keeping up with classes and work became impossible with the constant fatigue and morning sickness. Her grades slipped. Her scholarship, contingent on maintaining a certain GPA, was suspended. Without it, she couldn't afford tuition and housing for the spring semester. Returning to her stepfather's house had been a last resort. Vernon had agreed, with obvious reluctance, making it clear this was temporary charity, not familial obligation. For 2 months, Iris had endured his cutting remarks and barely concealed disgust at her condition. The final blow came yesterday morning when he'd announced he was engaged to a woman from his church who would be moving in the following week. "She has standards," Vernon had said, eyeing Iris's pregnant form with distaste, "and 3 kids of her own. There's no room for your situation here." "My situation?" Iris had repeated incredulously. "You mean your grandchild?" Vernon's laugh had been cold. "I'm not related to whatever's growing in there. Your mother made that mistake, not me. You have until Monday to figure something else out." The argument that followed had ended with Iris packing her backpack with essentials, her hands shaking with fury and fear as Vernon watched impassively from the doorway. "Your mother would be so disappointed," he'd said as she walked out. The words cut deeper than any physical blow. Iris had spent the day at the university library, using their computers to search frantically for housing options, women's shelters, any resource that might help. Most shelters were full, with waiting lists weeks long. Student emergency housing required active enrollment. By evening, when the library closed, she had nowhere to go but that bus stop, hoping for a miracle she didn't believe would come. And then Bradford Dario had appeared, like some unlikely guardian angel in a battered pickup truck. Now, freshly showered, and dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, the only ones she had, Iris made her way downstairs. The house was quiet but lived in, with the comfortable clutter of a household more focused on survival than aesthetics. Photos adorned the walls, chronicling Tyler's growth and the presence of the woman now absent. Elaine, Bradford had called her. In every picture, she radiated warmth, her arm often slung around Bradford's shoulders or her hand resting on Tyler's head. In the kitchen, Iris found a note propped against the coffee maker. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. Coffee's ready, just hit the switch. Back around 3:30. Bradford. The simple courtesy of it, leaving coffee prepared, offering food without stipulations, brought an unexpected lump to Iris's throat. She started the coffee and opened the refrigerator, finding it modestly stocked. Eggs, milk, bread, some fruit, leftover chicken from last night. A household clearly operating on a tight budget, but not in desperate straits. As the coffee brewed, Iris explored the living room, drawn to the bookshelf filled with an eclectic mix: car repair manuals, science fiction paperbacks, high school textbooks, and a substantial collection of mystery novels with creased spines and dog-eared pages. A leather-bound photo album sat on the bottom shelf, and Iris hesitated before carefully sliding it out. The album told the story of a family: Bradford and Elaine's wedding, Tyler's birth, birthday parties, camping trips, ordinary moments preserved as treasures. The most recent photos showed a visibly ill Elaine, thin but smiling bravely from a hospital bed, Bradford's arm protectively around her shoulders. The final pages were empty, as if Bradford couldn't bear to continue the visual narrative without her. Iris closed the album gently, feeling like an intruder in this family's grief. She returned to the kitchen, poured a cup of coffee, and sat at the table, facing the reality of her situation in the harsh light of day. She had exactly $237 in her bank account. No job, no housing, no family support, and a baby due in less than 3 months. Her academic career was on hold indefinitely. The father of her child wanted nothing to do with either of them. Her former friends had gradually drifted away, uncomfortable with her pregnancy or simply moving on with their lives, while hers stood still. For the first time since leaving Vernon's house, Iris allowed herself to cry, not the silent tears of yesterday's desperation, but deep, body-shaking sobs that released months of pent-up fear and grief. She cried for her mother, for the future she'd planned but lost, for the child who would be born into such uncertainty, and for her own naivete in believing love could be trusted. She was still at the table, red-eyed but composed, when Bradford returned home earlier than expected. He paused in the doorway, taking in her tear-stained face and the untouched coffee gone cold before her. "Rough morning?" he asked simply, setting down a grocery bag on the counter. Iris straightened, embarrassed to be caught in her moment of weakness. "I'm sorry. I'll be out of your way soon. I just need to figure out my next step." Bradford unpacked the groceries methodically: milk, bread, a carton of eggs, and surprisingly, a package of prenatal vitamins that he placed on the table near her. "The pharmacist said these were good ones," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I noticed you didn't have any with you last night." The unexpected thoughtfulness of it, that this stranger had noticed such a detail and acted on it, temporarily robbed Iris of speech. She began, then faltered. "Look," Bradford said, finally facing her, "I don't know your story, and you don't owe me an explanation, but it's supposed to snow all weekend, and you're clearly in a tough spot. The room's yours for a few days if you need it. No strings, no expectations. Why?" Iris finally managed, the question that had burned in her since last night. "Why would you help me?" Bradford leaned against the counter, his face showing the fatigue of a man who had been carrying heavy burdens for too long. "Because the world's hard enough without people making it harder for each other. And because I've been broke and scared before, just in different ways." He poured himself a cup of coffee, seemingly untroubled by its lukewarm temperature. "So what's it going to be? You stay in a few days, or should I drive you somewhere?" Iris looked at him, really looked at this man who had appeared when she needed someone most. Not young, not handsome in the conventional sense that had attracted her to Marcus, but solid somehow. Trustworthy in a way she couldn't articulate but sensed bone deep. "I'd like to stay," she said quietly. "Just until I can figure things out." Bradford nodded, as if the matter was settled. "Tyler's bringing pizza for dinner. He says it's his turn to cook, which means he's ordering in." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "Hope you like pepperoni." And just like that, Iris Storm had found a temporary haven amidst the broken pieces of her life. And perhaps, though she couldn't know it yet, the first foundation stones of something new. Chapter 3. Foundations. One night had turned into a week into a month. January arrived with bitter winds and record snowfall, transforming Detroit into a frozen landscape that made Iris's temporary shelter at Bradford's home seem increasingly permanent. She had settled into the spare room, gradually unpacking her meager belongings from her backpack, though she still kept everything ready for a quick departure if necessary. The arrangement had evolved organically. Bradford worked long hours at his 2 jobs, leaving Tyler alone more often than he liked. Iris, with nowhere else to go and a growing sense of obligation to the family that had taken her in, began filling the gaps. She prepared simple dinners using the groceries Bradford provided, helped Tyler with his homework in the evenings, and kept the house tidier than 2 males living alone had managed. "You don't have to earn your keep," Bradford had told her when he first came home to find dinner waiting and the living room vacuumed. "I know," Iris had replied, "but I want to contribute something." What had begun as a mutually beneficial arrangement slowly transformed into something resembling a makeshift family. Tyler, initially wary of this stranger in their home, had gradually warmed to Iris when she revealed an unexpected knowledge of astronomy, a subject he struggled with in his science class. Their first breakthrough came when she found him frustrated over a star chart assignment. "The Big Dipper isn't even a real constellation," she told him, settling awkwardly beside him at the kitchen table. "It's an asterism, part of Ursa Major." Tyler had looked up in surprise. "How do you know that?" "My mom was obsessed with stars," Iris explained. "She used to take me to the observatory at Wayne State on public nights. I was going to minor in astronomy before." She gestured to her prominent belly, now 7 months along. That night had been the beginning of their connection. Soon, they established a routine of studying together at the kitchen table after dinner, with Iris helping Tyler navigate not just astronomy, but literature and history as well. Bradford would often find them deep in conversation when he returned from his evening warehouse shift. For Bradford, watching this unlikely friendship develop brought complicated emotions. Relief that Tyler had found a mentor during his absence. Gratitude that Iris had a purpose beyond simply waiting for her baby to arrive. And beneath it all, a growing attachment to the young woman who had brought an unexpected warmth back into their home. A warmth that had been missing since Elaine's death. Bradford helped Iris apply for medical assistance through a community health center that specialized in prenatal care for uninsured mothers. Her first appointment had revealed the baby was healthy, but smaller than ideal, prompting the doctor to prescribe additional supplements and a nutrition plan that Bradford quietly ensured was followed despite their limited budget. "You don't need to keep spending money on me," Iris protested when he came home with special protein drinks the doctor had recommended. "It's not just for you," Bradford replied simply. "It's for the little one too." In February, Bradford connected Iris with a community college advisor who specialized in helping students facing difficult circumstances. Ms. Peterson, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed Iris's academic records and laid out options for her to eventually return to school with financial aid. "You've got a solid academic history," Ms. Peterson told her. "Your situation is challenging, but not insurmountable. Plenty of young mothers complete their education." For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, Iris allowed herself to imagine a future beyond mere survival. A future where she finished her degree, provided for her child, and built a life independent of charity or temporary solutions. That evening, she shared this renewed hope with Bradford as they sat at the kitchen table long after Tyler had gone to bed. "Ms. Peterson thinks I might qualify for a special program that includes childcare," she explained, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "I could start classes again in the fall, maybe just part-time at first." Bradford smiled, genuinely, pleased for her. "I never doubted you'd find your way back." Iris studied him in the dim light, this man who had become so unexpectedly central to her life. At 42, Bradford Dario was not handsome in the conventional sense that had once attracted her to Marcus. His face was weathered, lined at the eyes and mouth from years of hard work and harder grief. His hands were rough from manual labor, his body solid rather than sculpted. Yet there was something profoundly appealing about his steadiness, his quiet integrity, the way he carried his responsibilities without complaint. "Why did you really take me in that night?" she asked, the question that had lingered despite his previous answers. Bradford considered her for a long moment. "Honestly, you reminded me of myself after Elaine died. That look in your eyes, like you were drowning but still fighting to breathe. I recognized it." The simple truth of his answer moved her more than any practiced kindness could have. Iris reached across the table and briefly touched his hand, their first intentional physical contact beyond accidental brushes in the narrow hallway or kitchen. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the room or the food or the doctor, appointments, for seeing me." Something shifted between them in that moment, too subtle to name but significant enough that both felt it. Bradford withdrew his hand first, clearing his throat slightly. "Getting late," he said. "Early shift tomorrow." As March arrived, bringing the first hesitant signs of spring, Iris's pregnancy entered its final weeks. Her body grew increasingly uncomfortable, sleep elusive. Her movements labored and slow. Bradford quietly rearranged his work schedule to ensure either he or Tyler was always home with her, a precaution that proved prescient when 2 weeks before her due date, Iris woke at 3 a.m. with sharp rhythmic pains that couldn't be dismissed as practice contractions. "Bradford," she called, knocking on his bedroom door, embarrassment overridden by growing fear. "I think it's time." He appeared immediately, as if he hadn't been asleep at all. One look at her face contorted with pain as she leaned against the doorframe. And he was in motion, helping her to the truck while calling for Tyler to bring the overnight bag they had prepared weeks ago. The drive to the hospital was a blur of increasing contractions, and Bradford's steady voice coaching her through them. "You're doing great, Iris. Just breathe through it. We're almost there." In the delivery room, when the monitors began blaring, alarms and medical staff rushed in with urgent expressions, it was Bradford who refused to leave her side, despite nurses' attempts to usher him out. "Her blood pressure's dropping," Iris heard someone say, as if from a great distance. "We need to move now. The baby's heart rate is decelerating," another voice announced. Through the haze of pain and mounting terror, Iris felt Bradford's hand close around hers. "I'm right here," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." As they wheeled her toward the operating room for an emergency C-section, Iris clung to that promise more desperately than she'd ever held onto anything in her life. In that moment of crisis, Bradford Dario wasn't just her landlord or reluctant benefactor. He was her lifeline, the only stable point in a world suddenly spinning out of control. "Don't let go," she whispered as the anesthesia began to take effect, her fingers still intertwined with his. "Never," Bradford answered, his voice the last thing she heard before darkness claimed her. Hours later, Iris awakened to the soft beeping of monitors and the sight of Bradford dozing in a chair beside her bed, his hand still holding hers just as he'd promised. In a clear bassinet nearby lay a tiny bundle wrapped in hospital blankets. Her daughter, small but perfect, born at 37 weeks and fighting with the same determination that had carried Iris through her darkest days. "Bradford," she murmured, her throat raw from the breathing tube used during surgery. He startled awake instantly, relief flooding his features as he saw her conscious. "Hey there," he said softly. "You had us worried for a while." "The baby?" Iris asked, attempting to sit up despite the pain radiating across her abdomen. "She's perfect," Bradford assured her, helping her adjust the bed to see the bassinet better. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. The doctors say she's healthy, just a little small. Strong lungs, though. She let everyone know she had arrived. Tears filled Iris's eyes as she looked at her daughter's tiny face, so peaceful in sleep. "I need to hold her." Bradford carefully lifted the newborn, supporting her head with practiced ease that spoke of his own experience as a father, and placed her gently in Iris's arms. The weight of her child against her chest unleashed emotions too powerful to contain. Love and fear and wonder all mingled together as Iris traced a finger over impossibly small features. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Looking up at Bradford, who watched them with an expression of quiet joy, Iris suddenly knew with perfect clarity what to name her daughter. "Imani," she said. "It means faith in Swahili, because sometimes you have to believe things will get better even when you can't see how." Bradford nodded, understanding the significance without needing explanation. "It's perfect. She's perfect." As dawn broke over Detroit, painting the hospital room in soft golden light, 3 people who had been strangers just months before found themselves bound together by circumstances none could have predicted. A single father who had opened his home to a pregnant teenager, a young woman who had found refuge when she needed it most, and a newborn baby who represented both the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. None of them could know what the future held, but in that moment, as Imani wrapped her tiny hand around Bradford's finger while nestled in Iris's arms, the foundations of something extraordinary were already taking shape. Chapter 4. Growing Pains. 2 years had transformed the Dario household into something resembling a family, though none of them had ever officially named what they had become. Bradford was now 44, Iris 21, and Tyler had entered his senior year of high school. Imani had grown from a fragile newborn into a spirited toddler whose laughter echoed through the once quiet house. Bradford had been promoted to floor supervisor at the warehouse, allowing him to cut back to a single job with better hours and benefits. And Iris had completed her associate's degree in early childhood education, finding part-time work at a daycare center that allowed her to bring Imani along. The morning routine had settled into comfortable familiarity, Bradford preparing breakfast while Iris got Imani dressed, Tyler gulping down coffee before rushing off to school. The chaotic dance of 4 people sharing a modest bathroom and kitchen somehow worked, a choreography they had perfected through trial and error. "Imani, please eat your banana," Iris urged as she attempted to wrangle her daughter's wild curls into tiny barrettes. At 2, Imani had developed both her mother's beauty and a stubborn streak that tested everyone's patience. "No, Nana," the toddler declared firmly, pushing the fruit away. "Want bacon?" Bradford slid a small piece of bacon onto her plate without comment, earning a grateful smile from Iris. Their silent communication had developed over months of co-parenting, the ability to read each other's needs without words, to step in when the other was reaching their limit. "You spoil her," Iris said, though there was no reproach in her tone. Guilty as charged, Bradford admitted, pouring coffee into Iris's travel mug exactly how she liked it. 2 sugars, splash of the almond milk she preferred. "1 small piece of bacon won't hurt." As Tyler departed and Imani returned to picking at her breakfast, Bradford caught Iris's eye across the kitchen. Something in his gaze, a lingering warmth, a hint of something more than friendship, sent a flutter through her that she immediately suppressed. These moments had been occurring with increasing frequency, charged seconds where their comfortable arrangement seemed poised on the edge of something deeper. At 44, Bradford remained handsome in a weathered, substantial way that Iris found herself noticing more than she should. The grey at his temples had increased, but it suited him, giving him a distinguished air. But more than his appearance, it was his character that had slowly drawn her, his steadfast reliability, his quiet strength, the way he had welcomed her daughter as his own without hesitation. For Bradford, the evolution of his feelings had been equally confusing. At first, Iris had been simply a young woman in need, then a house guest, a friend, a co-parent to Imani. But somewhere during those midnight feedings, during the quiet conversations after the children were asleep, during the small domestic moments of cooking side by side, she had become essential to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He noticed everything about her, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, her habit of humming old Motown songs while washing dishes, the fierce intelligence that shone through her academic work. At 21, she was finding her way back to the ambitious plans that pregnancy had interrupted, but the 23-year age gap between them created boundaries neither dared to cross. Bradford feared taking advantage of his position as her benefactor, worried that any expression of deeper feelings might seem coercive to a young woman who still, in many ways, depended on his support. And Iris, keenly aware of all Bradford had done for her and Imani, feared that her growing attraction might be merely gratitude confused with romantic love. The letter arrived in early March, an envelope bearing the logo of Marygrove College, addressed to Iris. Bradford recognized it immediately as the school she had applied to for her bachelor's degree program, a small private college known for its education department. When she returned from the daycare center with Imani, Bradford wordlessly handed her the envelope. Iris's eyes widened, her fingers trembling slightly as she took it. "It came," she whispered, setting Imani down with her favorite picture book. "I'm afraid to open it." "Whatever it says, we'll figure it out," Bradford assured her, the "we" slipping out naturally. Iris took a deep breath and tore open the envelope, her eyes scanning the letter rapidly. "I got in," she said finally, looking up with wide eyes. "Full scholarship for the education program." "Iris, that's amazing!" Bradford exclaimed, genuine pride surging through him. "I knew you could do it." Her smile faltered slightly. "It's in Rochester, 3 hours away." The implications hung in the air between them. Rochester was too far for a daily commute. Accepting the scholarship would mean moving away, separating the makeshift family they had become. "I haven't decided anything yet," Iris hastened to add. "I need to think about what's best for Imani, for all of us." That night, after the children were asleep, they sat on the back porch. Bradford handed Iris a glass of the inexpensive wine they occasionally shared, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "You should accept the scholarship," he said finally. "It's what you've been working toward." Iris turned the glass in her hands, not meeting his eyes. "And what about Imani? This is the only home she's ever known. You and Tyler are her family too." "We'll always be her family," Bradford replied, choosing his words carefully. "That doesn't change if you're 3 hours away instead of 3 rooms away." "I'd need to find housing, childcare," Iris began, listing the practical obstacles. "The CT scholarship doesn't cover housing." "It does, actually. They have family student apartments on campus. But it would be just Imani and me alone." She looked up at him then, vulnerability in her eyes. "I've gotten used to having backup, to having you." "You don't need me, Iris," Bradford said gently. "You never have. You're one of the strongest people I've ever known." "That's not true," she countered. 2 years ago, I was sitting at a bus stop with nowhere to go, pregnant and terrified. You saved us." "I gave you a place to stay," Bradford corrected. "Everything else finishing school, being an amazing mother. To Imani, building a future. That's all been you. Why are you so eager to send me away? The question caught Bradford off guard. Eager? Iris, the last thing I want is for you and Imani to leave. But this is your future we're talking about. I won't be the reason you give that up. And what if I want to stay? She asked quietly. What if this, she gestured between them, matters more to me than a scholarship? Bradford's heart hammered in his chest. This? What exactly is this, Iris? You know what I mean, she said, setting her glass down. This family we've created, you, me, Tyler, Imani, the life we have here. A life you fell into because you had no other options, Bradford reminded her, the words painful but necessary. You were 19 and desperate when you came here. Now you have choices, real ones. I need to know you're making them freely, not out of obligation or misplaced gratitude. Iris flinched. Gratitude? You think that's what this is about? Isn't it? Bradford countered. I'm 23 years older than you, Iris. I've got a teenage son, a mortgage, and more gray hair than brown. You're just starting your life. You deserve someone your own age, someone without all this baggage. Don't tell me what I deserve, Iris said, her voice low but intense. And don't pretend you know what I feel. The baby monitor crackled with Imani's fretful cries, a timely interruption to a conversation rapidly approaching a point of no return. I should check on her, Iris said, rising. We can talk more tomorrow. Bradford nodded, relief and disappointment warring within him. Upstairs, as Iris soothed Imani back to sleep, her mind raced with all she had nearly confessed. How could she explain to Bradford that what she felt was far more complex than gratitude, that somewhere between midnight feedings and Saturday morning pancakes, between his patient help with her homework and his gentle way with Imani, she had fallen in love with a man who seemed determined to see himself as nothing more than a temporary safe harbor in her life. The decision before her was not just about education or career, but about the shape of their unconventional family. Rochester offered independence and the career she had dreamed of, but staying meant the chance to build on the foundation they had created together, to see if the tension between them might evolve into something deeper, something lasting. Across the hall, Bradford lay awake, replaying their conversation and wondering if, in his determination to do the right thing, he was pushing away the second chance at happiness he had never expected to find. Chapter 5. Distance. August 2017. The family student apartment in Rochester was nothing like the Dario home. Sterile white walls surrounded a living space barely large enough for a small sofa and coffee table. The kitchen consisted of a half-sized refrigerator, two-burner stove, and a counter that doubled as Iris's desk. Imani's toddler bed occupied half of the single bedroom, while Iris's twin mattress claimed the remainder. Yet for all its limitations, the apartment represented something precious to Iris, the first space that was truly hers, obtained through her own achievements rather than charity or necessity. 3 months into her bachelor's program at Marygrove College, she had settled into a routine that left little time for reflection. Classes during the day, while Imani attended the subsidized campus daycare, studying at night after her daughter. Fell asleep, working weekends at the campus library to supplement her scholarship stipend. Tonight, Iris sat cross-legged on her bed, textbooks spread around her as she prepared for a child development exam. Imani slept soundly in her Disney princess bed, one arm wrapped around the stuffed giraffe Tyler had given her as a going-away present. The digital clock showed 11:42 p.m., later than Iris had intended to study, but the material required her full concentration. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Only one person would contact her this late. Bradford. Just checking in. You still awake? A small smile touched Iris's lips as she typed back, studying for Davis's exam. Brain about to explode. Bradford. You've got this. How's our little firecracker? The hour warmed something in Iris's chest. Despite the physical distance, Bradford had never wavered in his connection to Imani, never treated their move to Rochester as diminishing his role in her daughter's life. Iris, finally asleep, spent the whole day asking when we're going to see Papa Brad and Uncle Tyler. She hesitated before sending the next text. She misses you. We both do. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared as Bradford composed his response. We miss you too. House is way too quiet without Imani's singing and your late-night coffee maker runs. Bradford, Tyler's college applications are driving us. Both crazy. 5 schools, 5 different essay requirements. Iris, tell him to call me if he wants help editing. I've gotten pretty good at academic writing. Bradford, I will. How are you really doing? Not just Imani, not just classes. The question hung on her screen, deceptively simple, yet loaded with meaning. How was she really doing? Physically, she was exhausted. Emotionally, that was more complicated. Iris, honestly, some days are harder than others. I know I made the right choice coming here, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. She sent the message before she could reconsider, her late-night fatigue lowering the careful barriers she usually maintained. In their communications, Bradford's response was slow in coming. I wonder that too. The simple admission made Iris's heart rate quicken. Since her departure 3 months ago, they had maintained a careful friendship, focused primarily on Imani and practical matters. Neither had referenced their last conversation. On the porch, when unspoken feelings had nearly surfaced, Iris's fingers hovered over the screen, unsure how to respond. Before she could decide, another text arrived. Bradford, sorry, it's late. You should get some sleep before your exam. The moment had passed. The door once again closed before either could step through it. Iris, you're right. Good night, Brad. Bradford, good night, Iris. Tell Imani Papa Brad sends a big hug in the morning. Iris set her phone aside and gathered her textbooks, knowing sleep would be elusive now despite her exhaustion. The brief exchange had stirred up all the questions that haunted her quiet moments. Had she made the right choice? Was the education worth the separation from the support system they had built? And most persistent of all, what exactly did Bradford, Dario feel for her beyond their shared commitment to Imani? November 2017, the first visit came 3 months after their move. Bradford and Tyler arrived on a Friday evening, their truck loaded with small furniture items and toys Iris hadn't been able to fit in her initial move. Imani had spotted them from the apartment window and erupted into unprecedented excitement, jumping up and down and screaming, "Papa Brad, Uncle Ty," with such volume that Iris was certain the entire building heard. Bradford had scooped Imani up the moment Iris opened the door, swinging the toddler into the air as she shrieked with delight. "There's my girl," he exclaimed, his face transformed by joy as Imani showered him with sloppy kisses. The weekend passed in a blur of activity, setting up the small bookshelf Bradford had built specifically for the apartment's dimensions, assembling Imani's new toddler bed, exploring the campus and surrounding town. They functioned as the unit they had been in Detroit, each anticipating the other's needs, sharing inside jokes, creating moments that felt like extensions of their life together rather than exceptions to their new separate reality. On Saturday night, after Imani had finally succumbed to sleep and Tyler had gone to explore the campus recreation center, Iris and Bradford found themselves alone for the first time since her departure. They sat on opposite ends of her small sofa, mugs of tea in hand. "The apartment looks good," Bradford offered, glancing around at the modest space Iris had made cozy with colorful throws, framed photos, and Imani's artwork taped to the refrigerator. "You've made it home." "It's getting there," Iris agreed. "Imani adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient." Bradford smiled, though something wistful lingered in his expression. How are classes? Challenging but good. My education psychology professor wants me to consider the graduate program after I finish my bachelor's. Says I have a natural aptitude for research. Pride brightened Bradford's features. That doesn't surprise me at all. You've always been the smartest person in the room. Iris laughed softly. Hardly, but I'm enjoying the work more than I expected. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of the small refrigerator and distant student voices from the apartment complex courtyard. Iris studied Bradford covertly, noting the new lines at the corners of his eyes, the slightly deeper grey at his temples. 3 months had changed him subtly, as it had changed her. Tyler seems good, she offered. More confident. He's coming into his own, Bradford agreed. The college applications have been stressful, but he's handling it better than I am. He's got his heart set on Michigan State's music program. He'll get in, Iris said with certainty. His talent is undeniable. Bradford's smile faltered slightly. It's expensive, even with scholarships. I've been picking up extra weekend shifts to build up his college fund. Concern furrowed Iris's brow. You're already working so much, Brad. The nickname slipped out, naturally. Her private shortening of his name that had evolved during late nights with Imani. Few people called Bradford anything but his full name, his personality somehow demanding the more formal address. But Brad had become Iris's alone. I'm fine, he assured her, just tired sometimes. Impulsively, Iris reached across the sofa to cover his hand with hers. You don't have to carry everything yourself, you know. Bradford looked down at their joined hands, his much larger than hers, weathered where hers was smooth. Old habits, he said softly. Elaine always said I had a hero complex. Not a complex, Iris corrected, just who you are. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the careful distance they had maintained crumbled slightly. Bradford turned his hand to interlace his fingers with hers, the simple gesture somehow more intimate than any words could have been. Iris, he began, his voice lower than usual. The apartment door burst open as Tyler returned, breathless and excited about the rock-climbing wall he'd discovered at the recreation center. The moment shattered, Bradford gently disengaging his hand from Iris's as Tyler launched into an enthusiastic description of his adventure. That night, as Iris lay awake listening to Bradford's soft snores from the sofa where he slept, she wondered what he had been about to say and whether they would ever find the courage to finish that conversation. February 2018. The pain of separation intensified as winter deepened. Monthly visits became their norm, alternating between Bradford and Tyler, coming to Rochester and Iris taking Imani back to Detroit. Each reunion brought joy. Imani's excitement never dimmed, her bond with Papa Brad and Uncle Tyler remaining strong. Each departure brought a peculiar grief that lingered for days afterward. The strain began to show in subtle ways. Iris found herself snapping at minor frustrations during phone calls. Bradford grew quieter, his texts shorter and less frequent. The distance wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a widening gap neither knew how to bridge. During one particularly difficult week in February, after Imani had fallen ill with a high fever that required an emergency room visit in the middle of the night, Iris found herself sobbing alone in her bathroom at 3 a.m., overwhelmed by the reality of facing such crises without Bradford's steady presence. Though she hadn't called him, Bradford sensed something was wrong when he couldn't reach her the next day. By evening, he had driven through a snowstorm to appear at her door, concern etched on his face. "How did you know?" Iris asked, collapsing into his embrace, the stress of the past 24 hours finally breaking her composed facade. "I just knew," he replied simply, holding her close as she cried. You didn't answer your phone, and something felt wrong. He stayed for 3 days, caring for Imani while Iris caught up on missed classes. Neither spoke about the deeper implications of his impromptu visit, how he had abandoned work responsibilities to be there, how naturally they fell back into their partnership during crisis, how empty the apartment felt when he finally had to return to Detroit. The incident marked a turning point, forcing them to acknowledge that their careful arrangement of monthly visits and daily texts wasn't sufficient. The emotional toll of their separation was affecting them all, creating a tension that threatened the very connection they were trying to preserve. April 2018, during one visit back to Detroit in early spring, as Imani played in the backyard under Tyler's watchful eye, Iris found Bradford in the kitchen preparing lunch, moving with the easy confidence of a man in his own domain. "Need any help?" she offered, sliding onto a bar stool at the counter. Bradford glanced up with a warm smile. "I've got it under control, unless you've suddenly developed culinary skills in Rochester." Iris laughed, the familiar teasing warming her. "Ramen noodles have become my specialty, much to Imani's dismay." "Poor kid," Bradford chuckled. "Good thing we send those care packages." The bi-weekly packages had become another tradition. Boxes containing Imani's favorite snacks, children's books Bradford found at second-hand stores, small necessities Iris might not be able to afford on her tight budget, and always a handwritten note from both Bradford and Tyler. "She sleeps with that blanket you sent every night," Iris said, referring to the soft purple fleece embroidered with Imani's name that had arrived on her daughter's 3rd birthday. "Says it smells like home." Something flickered in Bradford's eyes, pain or longing, perhaps both. "This will always be her home. You know that, right? No matter what, you both always have a place here." Iris nodded, throat suddenly tight with emotion. "I know." Bradford set down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables and leaned against the counter, facing her directly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy there, Iris? Truly happy?" The question caught her off guard with its directness. Iris considered it carefully, knowing Bradford deserved an honest answer. "I'm fulfilled," she said finally. "The work challenges me. I'm building a future for Imani and myself. But happy." She shook her head slightly. "Not completely. There's always something missing." Bradford held her gaze, the unspoken question in his eyes, inviting elaboration. "You," Iris said simply, the word barely audible. "Both of you. This." She gestured around the kitchen, the home that had sheltered her when she had nothing. "I've built a life there, but it doesn't feel whole without this family." Bradford's expression softened, vulnerability replacing his usual stoic demeanor. "We feel it too. The house is just a house without you and Imani. Tyler checks the calendar every day, counting down to your visits." "And you?" Iris asked, heart pounding. Bradford began, but the back door burst open as Tyler and Imani returned from the yard, the toddler clutching a fistful of dandelions and demanding Bradford put them in water immediately. The conversation remained unfinished, joining the growing collection of almost moments between them, opportunities for honesty interrupted by the very family dynamics that bound them together. May 2018 A's. Her first year at Marygrove drew to a close. Iris faced the decision she had been avoiding, whether to remain in Rochester for the summer or return to Detroit for the break. Academically, staying made sense. She could take additional courses, accelerating her program completion. Financially, remaining in the subsidized apartment was more practical than relocating temporarily. But standing in the family student apartment, watching Imani play with the photo of her family that occupied pride of place beside her bed, a candid shot of Bradford, Tyler, Iris, and Imani at a park the previous fall, Iris suddenly knew what her decision would be. Some distances were measured in miles, others in opportunities delayed or sacrificed. But the distance that mattered most was the one between hearts, and that, Iris was beginning to understand, could be the most challenging to navigate of all. Chapter 6. Crisis. The call came during Iris's final semester at Marygrove. She was in the library researching her capstone project when her phone vibrated with Tyler's number. "Tyler?" she answered, keeping her voice low. "Everything okay?" "Iris." His voice trembled with barely controlled panic. "It's Dad. There's been an accident at the warehouse." The world tilted beneath her. "How bad?" "Bad. Machinery malfunction. His leg..." Tyler's voice broke. "They've taken him to Detroit General. I'm on my way there now." Iris was already packing her books, mind racing. "I'm coming. I'll get Imani from daycare and drive down immediately." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She cut him off firmly. "We'll be there tonight." The 3-hour drive to Detroit was the longest of Iris's life. 4-year-old Imani sensed her mother's tension, despite Iris's attempts to remain calm, growing unusually quiet in her car seat. The only sound was the GPS, occasionally directing them and Iris's frequent calls to Tyler for updates. By the time they reached Detroit General, Bradford had been in surgery for over 2 hours. Iris found Tyler in the surgical waiting room, pale and disheveled, looking suddenly younger than his 18 years. "Tyler," she called, rushing toward him with Imani on her hip. He looked up, relief washing over his features as Iris wrapped her free arm around him. "You came," he whispered. "Of course we came." She guided him back to his seat, settling Imani on her lap. "Tell me what happened." Tyler recounted what little he knew. A conveyor system had malfunctioned, crushing Bradford's right leg between metal components. His supervisor had called Tyler from the ambulance, explaining that Bradford had remained conscious despite severe blood loss and pain. "The doctor said they're trying to save his leg," Tyler concluded, his voice hollow. "But they're not sure if they can." Iris's heart constricted. Bradford was the most physically capable person she knew. Strong, always in motion, supporting everyone around him. The thought of him permanently disabled seemed impossible to reconcile with the man who had carried Imani on his shoulders, who had worked double shifts without complaint, who had always been the family's foundation. "Uncle Ty's sad," Imani observed solemnly, patting Tyler's face with her small hand. "I'm sad, Squirt," Tyler admitted, attempting a smile for her benefit, "but I'm better now that you're here." The surgery lasted another 3 hours. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression gave nothing away as he approached them. "Family. Of Bradford Dario?" "Yes," Iris and Tyler answered simultaneously, rising to meet him. The surgeon studied them briefly, perhaps wondering about their relationship to the patient, but proceeded without questioning. "Mr. Dario made it through surgery. We were able to save the leg, but there's significant damage to the muscle and vascular structure. He has a long recovery ahead, with no guarantees of full mobility." Iris's legs nearly buckled with relief at the first part of the news, while the prognosis settled like a weight on her shoulders. "Can we see him?" "He's in recovery now. Once he's stabilized and moved to a room, the nurse will come get you. One visitor at a time, just for tonight." When the nurse finally came for them near midnight, Tyler insisted Iris go first. "He'll want to see you," he said quietly. "He always does." Iris left a sleeping Imani with Tyler and followed the nurse through sterile corridors to Bradford's room. Nothing could have prepared her for the sight that greeted her. Bradford Dario, always so vital and strong, now pale against white sheets attached to machines that beeped softly in the dim light. His right leg was elevated, heavily bandaged, and immobilized. "Brad," she whispered, approaching the bed cautiously. His eyes flickered open, unfocused at first, then clearing as they landed on her face. "Iris?" His voice was hoarse, confused. "What are you doing here?" "Where else would I be?" She took his hand, noting how cold his fingers felt compared to their usual warmth. "School, your project," he murmured, fighting against medication that pulled him towards sleep. "None of that matters right now," Iris said firmly, squeezing his hand. "Tyler called. Imani and I came as soon as we heard." A ghost of his usual smile crossed Bradford's face. "Imani is here? Asleep in the waiting room with Tyler. She can see you tomorrow when you're more awake." Bradford's eyes drifted closed, then opened with visible effort. "You shouldn't have left school. Your finals." "Stop," Iris interrupted gently. "Don't tell me what I should have done. Did you really think anything could keep me away?" His fingers tightened weakly around hers. "The doctor says, might not walk right again." "Then we'll deal with that," Iris replied, the "we" coming naturally. "But right now you just focus on healing. Everything else can wait." Bradford studied her face in the dim light, something vulnerable in his expression that Iris had rarely seen. "Why did you come back, Iris? Really?" The question held echoes of their first night. Iris, pregnant and desperate, asking why Bradford would help a stranger. Now their positions were reversed. Bradford, the vulnerable one. Iris, the steady presence offering support. "Because you're in family," she answered simply. "And family shows up." Bradford's eyes filled with unexpected tears that he was too weak to hide. "I'm scared, Iris," he admitted, the words appearing to cost him dearly. "What if I can't work, can't support Tyler?" "Then we figure it out together," Iris promised, brushing the hair from his forehead with gentle fingers. "Just like you did for me when I had nothing. Let me be strong for you now." He drifted to sleep with her hand still in his. The machines, keeping steady rhythm in the quiet room. In the days that followed, Iris took control with a competence that surprised even her. She arranged a leave of absence from school just months before her graduation. She navigated insurance paperwork, coordinated with doctors, set up Bradford's home for his eventual return. When Tyler panicked about missing school days, Iris created a schedule that allowed him to attend classes while ensuring someone was always with Bradford. "You don't have to do all this," Bradford told her a week after the accident, watching as she efficiently organized his medication schedule. "I know I don't have to," Iris replied, not looking up from her task. "I want to." The hospital discharged Bradford after 2 weeks, sending him home with strict rehabilitation instructions, pain medication, and a prognosis that remained cautiously optimistic but non-committal. The first day home revealed challenges they hadn't anticipated. The stairs to the second-floor bedrooms were impossible for Bradford to navigate, the bathroom too narrow for the wheelchair he initially required. Iris transformed the rarely used dining room into a temporary bedroom, moving furniture and creating a space that preserved Bradford's dignity while accommodating his needs. Imani appointed herself her Papa Brad's special helper, solemnly bringing him water and books, chattering endlessly about her day to distract him from pain. Tyler threw himself into college applications while helping with household tasks that had once been Bradford's domain. His acceptance to Michigan State's music program, complete with partial scholarship, arrived during Bradford's 3rd week, home providing a much-needed bright spot. As April turned to May, Bradford progressed from wheelchair to walker to cane, each milestone celebrated by their small family. The medical bills mounted despite insurance, and Iris discovered Bradford had been dipping into Tyler's college fund to cover expenses. Late one night, after the children were asleep, Iris confronted him in the makeshift bedroom. "Why didn't you tell me about the bills?" Bradford sighed, setting aside the book he'd been reading. "It's not your burden to carry." "Stop saying that," Iris said, frustration evident in her voice. "When will you understand that your problems are my problems too? That's what family means." "You have your own life, Iris. Your degree." "I've arranged to complete my coursework." Remotely, she interrupted. The dean made an exception given the circumstances. I'll graduate in August instead of May. Bradford stared at her, stunned. You did that without telling me? Yes, Iris said simply, because I knew you'd try to talk me out of it. Of course I would. You can't put your future on hold for me. I'm not putting anything on hold, Iris countered. I'm choosing what matters, most right now. And that's being here, helping you heal, making sure Tyler gets to college without debt, and giving Imani stability. Bradford shook his head, a conflict of emotions playing across his face. I never wanted to be your responsibility. Iris sat on the edge of the bed, meeting his gaze directly. And I never wanted to be yours, but you took me in anyway. Why is it so hard for you to accept the same kindness you've shown others? The question hung between them, cutting to the heart of Bradford's struggle. Finally he spoke, his voice low and honest. Because I'm supposed to be the one who takes care of people, not the other way around. Says who? Iris challenged gently. That's not how love works, Brad. It's not a one-way street. The word, love, slipped out naturally, hanging in the air between them. Neither acknowledged it directly, but something shifted in Bradford's expression, a softening, a surrender. So, what now? He asked quietly. Iris took his hand, her small, fingers intertwining with his larger ones. Now we do what we've always done. We take care of each other. In that moment, with their hands joined and honesty finally breaking through Bradford's walls, the crisis that had threatened to separate them instead became the catalyst for a deeper understanding, one that would ultimately transform their relationship in ways neither could yet fully comprehend. Chapter 7. Revelations, July 2018. Summer arrived with unusual heat, transforming Detroit into a shimmering landscape of baked concrete and sweltering nights. Bradford's recovery progressed steadily. The wheelchair gathered dust in the corner as he navigated the house with a cane, determination written in every labored step. His physical therapist had recently cleared him for more challenging exercises, kindling hope that he might eventually return to work in some capacity. Iris sat on the back porch steps one evening, watching Imani chase fireflies in the small yard. The little girl's delighted squeals punctuated the humid air as she darted through the gathering dusk, cupping her hands around the glowing insects before releasing them with ceremonial care. Careful not to go too far back, Iris called, keeping an eye on the deepening shadows near the old oak tree. I'm being careful, Mama, Imani assured her with the solemn dignity only a 3-year-old could muster. The screen door creaked behind Iris, and Bradford emerged, his movements cautious but more fluid than they had been even a week ago. The setting, sun-cast copper highlights in his hair and softened the lines of fatigue that had become a permanent feature since the accident. Mind if I join you? He asked, lowering himself carefully to sit beside her. Iris shifted to make room, acutely aware of his nearness. How was therapy today? Brutal, Bradford admitted with a half-smile. But effective. Dr. Chen says I'm ahead of schedule. Their shoulders brushed as he settled beside her, the casual contact sending a ripple of warmth through Iris that had nothing to do with the summer heat. These moments had been occurring with increasing frequency, accidental touches that lingered. Gazes held a beat too long, conversations that veered toward deeper waters before one of them steered back to safer shores. Tyler called, Bradford continued, his eyes tracking Imani's movements across the yard. His orientation is going well. Roommate seems decent, though apparently the kid snores like a freight train. Iris laughed softly. Poor Tyler. Maybe we should send him earplugs in our next care package. Already ordered some, Bradford confirmed, along with those coffee beans he likes and some decent ramen, college budget necessities. The casual we and our in their exchange went unremarked, but not unnoticed. Over the past 3 months, As Iris had stepped fully into the role of Bradford's caretaker and partner in maintaining their household, the lines that had once separated them had blurred almost to invisibility. "I got a call from Marygrove today," Iris said after a comfortable silence. "They're processing my degree. Official graduation is next week, but I won't attend the ceremony." Bradford turned to her, genuine pride brightening his features. "Iris, that's wonderful. But why wouldn't you go? You've earned that moment." She shrugged, watching as Imani began an elaborate dance with a particularly persistent firefly. "It's just a formality. Besides, the ceremony conflicts with your aquatic therapy, and we'd need to find someone to watch Imani." Bradford's expression shifted, the familiar guilt settling into the creases around his eyes. "You're missing your graduation because of me." "I'm choosing not to attend an optional ceremony," Iris corrected firmly. "There's a difference. You should be celebrating this achievement, not stuck here playing nurse to a broken-down old man." Iris turned to face him fully, irritation flaring. "Is that how you see me, as stuck here, as your nurse?" "No, but because I chose to be here, Bradford. I chose you and Imani and this life we've built. My degree doesn't change that." The intensity in her voice surprised them both. Bradford studied her face in the fading light, something shifting in his expression. A dawning realization, perhaps, or the courage to finally acknowledge what had been growing between them. "Why did you really come back, Iris?" he asked softly, echoing the question he'd asked in the hospital months earlier. "You had a future in Rochester, opportunities, independence." Iris held his gaze, her heart thundering against her ribs. The moment felt pivotal, balanced on the edge of truth that could change everything. "Because when Tyler called about your accident, I realized something I'd been avoiding for years," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "That I could lose you without ever having told you how I feel." Bradford's breath caught audibly. "And how do you feel?" "I love you." The words emerged with startling simplicity. "Not as the man who took me in, or Imani's father figure, or my friend. I'm in love with you, Bradford. And it's not gratitude or dependency." "How can you be sure?" Bradford asked, his voice strained with the effort of restraint. "After everything I've done for you, do you remember the night Imani had that terrible ear infection when she was 18 months old?" Iris interrupted, her eyes never leaving his. "You paced the nursery for hours with her while I slept, even though you had to work the next day. I woke up and found you both asleep in the rocking chair, her fever finally broken, your work shirt soaked with her tears. That's when I knew." Bradford's expression softened at the memory. "Knew what?" "That what I felt for you wasn't just gratitude. It was deeper, realer." "Or what about the time you drove 3 hours to bring me my statistics textbook that I'd forgotten in Detroit? You didn't lecture me about responsibility or make me feel stupid. You just showed up, handed me the book, and drove back because you had a shift that night." "I remember," Bradford said quietly. "I wanted to stay, but you always put everyone else first," Iris finished for him. "That's who you are. And it's one of the countless reasons I fell in love with you. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are. The man who stays up all night with a sick child that isn't biologically his, who drives 6 hours round trip just to deliver a textbook, who teaches his son to respect women by how he treats me every day." Her words hung between them, raw with honesty. Bradford reached out, his work-roughened fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've been fighting this for years," he admitted, his voice low and rough with emotion. "Telling myself it was wrong to feel this way about you, that I was too old, too broken, too much of a burden. That you deserved someone younger, someone who could give you a fresh start instead of a complicated past." "I never wanted easy," Iris said, leaning subtly into his touch. "I wanted real. I wanted you." She recalled the moment she first recognized. Her feelings had shifted. Sitting at the kitchen table late one night, Bradford teaching her calculus for her community college class. his patience unwavering as she struggled with the concepts. He'd explained the same problem 3 different ways until something clicked, and she'd looked up to find him watching her with such quiet pride that her heart had contracted painfully with the realization that she wanted him to look at her that way forever. "Remember when you taught me calculus?" she asked softly. "You spent hours helping me understand derivatives when any other person would have given up or gotten frustrated. You made me believe I could do it, that I was smart enough. No one had ever had that kind of faith in me before." Bradford smiled at the memory. "You got an A in that class." "Because of you," Iris said. "Not just your help with the math, but your belief in me. That's when I started falling for you, even though I tried to tell myself it was just admiration." Bradford reached up with his free hand, his fingers trembling slightly as they traced the curve of her cheek. "Iris," he whispered, her name a prayer. On his lips, she leaned forward, eliminating the last inches between them, and pressed her mouth to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, the hesitant exploration of territory both had imagined but never dared to claim. Then Bradford's hand slid to the nape of her neck, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened into something hungry and certain. Years of restrained desire finally finding expression. Heat flared between them, a current of longing so powerful it momentarily made Bradford forget the limitations of his healing body. As he shifted to pull her closer, pain from his injured leg broke through the haze of desire, causing him to break away with a sharp intake of breath. "Sorry," he gasped, frustration evident in his voice. "Damn leg." Iris rested her forehead against his, her breathing unsteady. "Don't apologize. We have time. All the time we need." "Mama, Papa, Brad, look what I caught." Imani's excited voice shattered the moment as she raced toward them, hands cupped around her prize. They separated slightly, but Bradford kept his fingers intertwined with Iris's as they turned their attention to the little girl who had in many ways been the bridge between them from the beginning. "What did you find, sweetheart?" Bradford asked, his voice still husky from their interrupted kiss. Imani carefully opened her hands to reveal a particularly large firefly, its abdomen pulsing with golden light. "It's the king of the fireflies," she announced with absolute certainty. "He told me he wants to live in our house with us." "Did he now?" Iris smiled, meeting Bradford's gaze over their daughter's head. "Well, we should probably release His Majesty back to his kingdom. Firefly kings need to be free." "But he likes us," Imani protested. "He wants to stay in our family." Bradford gently closed the little girl's fingers around the insect again. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for those we care about is let them go when they need to fly," he explained, his words carrying a weight Imani couldn't possibly understand. "But that doesn't mean they won't come back to us." Imani considered this wisdom with serious contemplation before nodding. With ceremonial gravity, she released the firefly, watching as it rose into the darkening sky, its light pulsing like a farewell signal before joining the constellation of its fellows among the trees. "He'll come back," she declared confidently, climbing onto Bradford's lap without regard for his injured leg. Bradford winced slightly, but adjusted to accommodate her weight, wrapping one arm around the child while keeping his other hand firmly linked with Iris's. "I believe he will," he agreed, his eyes never leaving Iris's face. Later that night, after Imani was tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Iris found Bradford in his temporary bedroom, struggling to manage his evening physical therapy exercises alone. "Let me help," she offered, kneeling beside him to support his leg through the prescribed stretches. Bradford surrendered to her assistance, watching her face as she worked with gentle efficiency. "We should talk about what happened earlier," he said finally. Iris met his gaze, her hands stilling on his leg. "Do you regret it?" "God, no," Bradford answered immediately, the vehemence in his voice leaving no doubt. "But I need to know you don't. You're 22, Iris. I'm 45. That's a 23-year gap. Do you think I haven't considered that? Iris asked, resuming the therapeutic movement. That I haven't thought about what others might say or think. I've had years to examine my feelings from every angle, Bradford. They haven't changed. People will talk, he warned. They'll say I took advantage of you when you were vulnerable, that I groomed you from the beginning. Anger flashed in Iris's eyes. Let them talk. We know the truth. You spent years pushing me away, encouraging my independence, putting my needs before your feelings. If anything, I pursued you. A hint of his familiar smile touched Bradford's lips. Is that what you're doing now? Pursuing me? The lightness in his tone eased the tension, and Iris smiled back. Caught me. I'm seducing you with physical therapy. Is it working? Bradford caught her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture so unexpectedly romantic, it sent warmth flooding through her. More than you know, he murmured against her fingers. The simple kiss ignited something between them. The air in the small room suddenly charged with awareness. Bradford's eyes darkened as he drew her closer, their mouths meeting with none of the hesitation of their earlier kiss. This time, the contact was all heat and certainty, years of restrained desire finally finding expression. Iris melted against him, careful of his injured leg, but unwilling to break the connection. Bradford's hands tangled in her hair, cradling her head as he deepened the kiss, a soft groan escaping him when she pressed closer. Iris, he breathed against her mouth. We should slow down. She pulled back enough to meet his gaze, her eyes reflecting desire tempered with understanding. Because of your leg? Because I want to do this right, Bradford clarified, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with tender precision. You deserve more than a rushed encounter in a makeshift bedroom with a man who can barely stand on his own. Iris leaned into his touch, understanding filling her eyes. We have time, she assured him again. All the time we need to get this right. Bradford nodded, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture of intimacy that somehow felt more significant than their passionate kisses. I love you, Iris Storm, he said quietly, the words emerging with the weight of long consideration. I think I have since that first morning, when I found you in my kitchen crying over cold coffee. I just didn't know what to call it then. Iris closed her eyes, absorbing the words she had longed to hear, savoring the certainty in his voice. I love you too, she whispered. I think I started falling the night you found me at that bus stop. You saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to everyone else. They remained that way for moments that stretched like honey, foreheads touching, hands intertwined, breath mingling in the quiet room. No further words were needed. The understanding between them transcended language, built on years of shared experiences, mutual respect, and the slow, inevitable gravitation of two hearts recognizing their counterpart, despite all circumstances that should have kept them apart. When Iris finally rose to leave him to rest, Bradford caught her hand once more. Stay, he requested simply. Just to sleep. I've spent too many nights without you already. The vulnerability in his request touched something deep in Iris's heart. Without hesitation, she settled beside him on the narrow bed, fitting herself carefully against his uninjured side. Bradford's arm encircled her, drawing her close until her head rested naturally on his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Beneath her ear, better than any lullaby. Is this okay? She asked, mindful of his healing body. Bradford's answer was to press a kiss to the crown of her head, his arms tightening fractionally around her. More than okay, he murmured into her. Here, it's everything. As they drifted towards sleep, entwined in the quiet darkness, the revelation of their feelings seemed less a dramatic transformation than a natural evolution. The final piece clicking into place in a puzzle they had been assembling piece by careful piece since that snowy night at a Detroit bus stop 4 years earlier. Chapter 8. Metamorphosis Autumn painted Detroit in brilliant hues of red and gold, mirroring the transformation blooming within the walls of the Dario home. Bradford's recovery had progressed to the point where he could navigate stairs with minimal assistance, allowing him to reclaim his upstairs bedroom. But he rarely slept there alone anymore. In the soft pre-dawn light, Iris traced lazy patterns across Bradford's chest as they lay tangled in sheets still warm from sleep and lovemaking. 6 weeks into their newly acknowledged relationship, the wonder of waking beside him hadn't diminished. "What are you thinking about?" Bradford murmured, his voice husky with sleep as he caught her wandering hand and brought it to his lips. "How much everything has changed," Iris replied, pressing a kiss to his shoulder. "Yet somehow it feels like this was always waiting for us." Bradford pulled her closer, his body fitting against hers with a rightness that still amazed them both. "Worth the wait," he whispered against her hair. Their physical relationship had developed with the same careful consideration that characterized everything between them. Bradford's injuries had necessitated creativity and patience, but the limitations had only deepened their connection, forcing communication more intimate than mere passion might have allowed. Each discovery of what brought the other pleasure felt like a private victory. Each vulnerable moment of exposure, another layer of trust built between them. The sound of small feet pattering down the hall gave them just enough warning to adjust the bed covers before their bedroom door burst open, revealing Imani in her favorite unicorn pajamas. "Mama! Papa, Brad! It's Saturday pancake day!" she announced, launching herself onto the bed with the exuberance only a 4-year-old could muster at 6:30 a.m. Bradford caught her mid-flight, settling her between them with practiced ease. "Is it that time already? I thought Saturday was cancelled this week." Imani giggled, snuggling into the warmth between them. "You're silly, Papa. Days don't get cancelled." The easy way she had accepted their new sleeping arrangement was just one more miracle in a season full of them. To Imani, this evolution seemed natural. The two people she loved most now shared a room, just as they shared everything else in their lives. "Did you check if Uncle Tyler called?" Iris asked, smoothing Imani's wild curls. "Not yet. Can we call him after pancakes?" "Absolutely," Bradford agreed, dropping a kiss on her forehead. "Now, who's helping me in the kitchen? I need my best pancake flippers." "Me!" Imani scrambled off the bed, racing toward the door. "I'll get the mixing bowl ready." As her footsteps receded down the stairs, Bradford pulled Iris back for a lingering kiss that promised continuation later. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too," Iris replied, the words still new enough to send warmth cascading through her. "Even if you do spoil our daughter shamelessly." The phrase "our daughter" hung between them, unexamined but profoundly right. In every way that mattered, they had become a family, not through legal documentation or biological connection, but through the daily choice to love and care for one another. Downstairs, as Bradford taught Imani the perfect pancake flipping technique, Iris's phone buzzed with a text from Carol Peterson, her mentor from the community college. "I recommended you for that teaching position at Detroit Community Early Learning Center. They want to interview you next week. Starting salary is better than we discussed. Call me." Iris stared at the message, emotions churning. The position, lead preschool teacher at a respected center, represented everything she'd worked toward. Professionally, yet accepting would mean officially putting down roots in Detroit, committing to the path she and Bradford were forging together. "Good news?" Bradford asked, noticing her expression as he expertly flipped a blueberry pancake. "Maybe," Iris replied, showing him the message. "It's the job Carol mentioned last month." Bradford's face lit with pride. "Iris, that's fantastic. When's the interview?" His immediate support, free from any hesitation about what it might mean for them. confirmed what she already knew. This was right. This was home. Next Tuesday. Would you mind watching Imani? I don't want to be distracted. Try and stop me, Bradford replied, leaning over to kiss her quickly, heedless of Imani's giggles beside them. We'll be your cheerleading squad. Later that morning, after pancakes and a video call with Tyler, who regaled them with tales of his first college performances, Bradford suggested they tackle the attic, a project he'd been planning since regaining his mobility. There's too much stuff we don't use, he explained. Elaine's things, my old work equipment, boxes we haven't opened in years. Iris understood the significance of the proposal. Bradford's willingness to finally sort through his late wife's possessions marked another stage in his healing, not from his physical injuries, but from the grief that had shaped him when they first met. The attic revealed treasures and memories, Elaine's sewing machine that Bradford suggested Iris might use, photo albums from Tyler's early childhood, Bradford's high school baseball trophies. Each item was considered carefully, some set aside to keep, others designated for donation, a few particularly meaningful pieces selected for Tyler. In a dusty corner, Bradford discovered a small jewelry box. Opening it revealed a vintage sapphire ring, delicate in its silver setting. Elaine's grandmother's engagement ring, he said softly. I'd forgotten we had this. Iris watched his face, searching for pain, but found only gentle remembrance. It's beautiful, she observed, not touching the ring that represented another woman's love story. Bradford closed the box carefully. She always said it should go to Tyler someday, for when he found someone special. He tucked it into a separate container marked with Tyler's name, then turned to Iris with unexpected solemnity. When the time comes for us, and it will, you should have something that's just yours, something new that represents our beginning. Iris's heart stuttered at the implication, not just of a future proposal, but of Bradford's certainty about their path forward. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Bradford took her hands, dust smudges and all. I'm saying I know exactly where we're headed, Iris Storm. I'm just waiting for the right moment to make it official. Their kiss amid the attic's dust and memories felt symbolic, acknowledging the past while embracing a future neither had imagined possible when they first met. As autumn deepened toward winter, their transformation continued, both individually and as a family. Bradford returned to work part-time in an administrative role. At the warehouse, his experience valued even if his physical capabilities remained limited. Iris aced her interview and began her new position at the Learning Center, bringing Imani with her at a reduced tuition rate that made the arrangement feasible. Their individual healing found reflection in the home itself as they gradually renovated, room by room. They painted over the faded wallpaper in the kitchen, replaced the worn carpet in the living room, and transformed the spare bedroom, once Iris's temporary haven, into a proper space for Imani, decorated with stars and moons in tribute to the astronomy that had first connected her to Tyler. Not everyone approved of their relationship. Bradford's sister expressed concern about his midlife crisis when they finally told extended family about the change in their relationship. Some of Iris's former classmates questioned her choices, implying she had settled for security rather than pursuing broader opportunities. But for every doubter, there were those who recognized the genuine love between them. Tyler, who gave his blessing during a heartfelt conversation with Iris over Thanksgiving break. Bradford's former co-workers who had witnessed his transformation from grief-stricken widower to a man rekindled by love. Iris's mentor, Carol, who observed that some souls simply recognized each other regardless of conventional timing. As the first anniversary of Bradford's accident approached, he surprised Iris by taking her to a small Italian restaurant downtown. Their first proper date night since acknowledging their feelings. You look beautiful, he said as they were seated, his eyes appreciating the simple black dress she had selected. At 23, Iris had blossomed into a striking woman whose quiet confidence turned heads wherever they went. "You clean up pretty. Well, yourself," she replied, taking in Bradford's crisp button-down shirt and the new charcoal sport coat that emphasized his broad shoulders. At 46, with silver threading prominently through his dark hair, he carried himself with a quiet dignity that Iris found irresistibly attractive. Bradford reached across the table to take her hand, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. "Do you know what today is?" Iris tilted her head. "Thursday. 5 years ago today, I found a young woman sitting at a bus stop in the snow," Bradford said softly. "I had no idea she would become the miracle that saved all of us." Emotion tightened Iris's throat as the significance registered. "You remembered the exact date." "How could I forget the night that changed everything?" Bradford's eyes held hers, conveying depths of feeling words couldn't capture. "Even then, something in me recognized you, though I didn't understand it at the time. I was so scared," Iris admitted, "not just of being homeless and pregnant, but of trusting a stranger's kindness. And I was terrified of feeling anything again after losing Elaine," Bradford acknowledged. "Yet here we are." "Here we are," Iris agreed, squeezing his hand. After dinner, instead of driving directly home, Bradford took an unexpected detour, parking near the bus shelter where they had first met. The area had been renovated, the old bench replaced with a newer model, the shelter itself brightened with better lighting and community artwork. "What are we doing here?" Iris asked as Bradford helped her from the car, the December air crisp. Around them, Bradford led her to the bench, brushing away a dusting of snow before gesturing for her to sit. Instead of joining her, he lowered himself carefully to one knee, his once injured leg still stiff in cold weather. "5 years ago, a miracle happened here," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "A lost young woman and a broken man found each other and somehow, against all odds, built something beautiful together." Iris's breath caught as Bradford reached into his coat pocket, producing a small velvet box. "Iris Storm, you've brought light and joy back into a home that had forgotten how to be happy. You've loved my son as your own, created our beautiful daughter, and shown me that life doesn't end with loss. It transforms and grows in ways we never expect." He opened the box to reveal a platinum ring with a round diamond flanked by smaller sapphires, new and uniquely hers, as he had promised. "Will you marry me, Iris? Will you make official what we've known in our hearts for years, that we belong together, now and always?" Tears blurred Iris's vision as she nodded, too overwhelmed for words at first. "Yes," she finally managed, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Bradford Dario, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, snowflakes began to fall. Around them, gentle echoes of the night that had brought them together. Bradford rose to join her on the bench, gathering her into a kiss that held all the promise of their future. "I never expected you," he murmured against her lips, "but somehow you were exactly what I needed." "What we all needed," Iris corrected, her arms around his neck, her body pressed close for warmth. A family built from broken pieces. Their return home was delayed by several heated kisses in the car, passion building between them until Bradford reluctantly started the engine. "We should get back to relieve the babysitter," he said, his voice husky with desire. "And then?" Iris asked, her hand resting meaningfully on his thigh. Bradford's smile held promise. "And then I plan to thoroughly celebrate our engagement." The simple gold band Iris had admired in the jewelry box would indeed go to Tyler someday. But in that moment, as Bradford drove them home with her hand in his, the new ring on her finger caught the light like a promise fulfilled, not a replacement for what had been lost, but a symbol of what had been found against all odds. Their metamorphosis was complete. What remained was the joy of living the life they had created together, a testament to the family they had built, not through convention or obligation, but through the daily choice to love, through challenges embraced and overcome, through the recognition that sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive in the most unexpected packages. Chapter 9. Full Circle. December 2022. The Detroit winter had returned in full force, transforming the city into the same snow-covered landscape where their story had begun 8 years earlier. Iris, now 27, stood at the kitchen window watching the flakes fall, while Imani, almost 8, carefully arranged Christmas decorations on the mantel. "Mama, where's Papa Brad? He promised we'd make gingerbread tonight," Imani called, glancing at the clock with the impatience of a child excited for holiday traditions. "He had an errand to run," Iris replied, checking her phone again. Bradford had been mysteriously absent all afternoon, his text messages vague about his whereabouts. "He'll be back soon." The past 4 years had brought changes both significant and subtle to their family. Bradford had returned to work part-time before eventually accepting a management position that utilized his experience without taxing his partially healed leg. Iris had established herself as a respected early childhood educator, recently accepting a position developing curriculum for a network of learning centers across Detroit. Their relationship had deepened with each passing season, the initial intensity maturing into something even more profound, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and a love that continued to surprise them both with its resilience. The headlights of Bradford's truck swept across the front window, and Imani raced to the door. "Finally," she exclaimed. "I've been waiting forever." Bradford entered, bringing a gust of cold air and snowflakes with him. At 50, the silver had completely overtaken the dark in his hair, but he carried himself with a vigor that belied both his age and the lingering effects of his long-ago injury. "Sorry I'm late," he said, bending to accept Imani's enthusiastic hug before meeting Iris's questioning gaze over their daughter's head. Something in his expression, a mixture of nervousness and suppressed excitement, piqued her curiosity. "Everything okay?" she asked, accepting his cold kiss on her cheek. "Perfect," he assured her, though the energy radiating from him suggested something unusual was afoot. "But I need to steal you away for about an hour before our gingerbread extravaganza." He turned to Imani. "Think you can hold down the fort? With Mrs. Reyes next door. I already asked her to come over." Imani considered this, clearly torn between her desire for gingerbread making and the grown-up responsibility of being left with their neighbor. "Is it a Christmas surprise for me?" she asked shrewdly. Bradford laughed. "Not everything is about you, little miss. Sometimes grown-ups need time alone too." The doorbell rang, announcing Mrs. Reyes's arrival. Within minutes, Iris found herself bundled into her warmest coat and settled in Bradford's truck, thoroughly mystified by his behavior. "Are you going to tell me what this is about?" she asked as they drove through the snowy streets, the city transformed into a glittering wonderland of white frosted buildings and holiday lights. "Patience," Bradford replied, reaching across to take her hand. "Just trust me." The route he chose began to seem familiar, and Iris felt a strange premonition as they turned onto Lakewood Street. When Bradford pulled up near the bus shelter where they had first met, her heartbeat quickened with understanding. "Brad," she began, emotion already tightening her throat. "Just wait," he said softly, coming around to help her from the truck. The old bus stop had changed considerably over the years. What had once been a simple shelter with a bench was now part of a small community pocket park, the result of a neighborhood beautification project. Solar-powered lights illuminated the space, and someone had wrapped the young trees in twinkling holiday lights. But what caught Iris's attention was the bench, still in the same location, though now a newer model. On it sat a simple wrapped package, tied with a red ribbon. Bradford guided her to the bench, brushing away the light dusting of snow before gesturing for her to sit. 8 years ago tonight, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident. In his eyes, I was driving home from a late shift. I was tired, stressed about bills, worried about Tyler being alone so much. Iris nodded, remembering the night with perfect clarity despite the years that had passed. I almost drove right past. Bradford continued, remaining standing despite his leg that still troubled him in cold weather. Almost didn't stop. That single moment, that split-second decision to pull over, changed everything. He reached for the package on the bench, placing it in her hands. "Open it." With fingers trembling slightly from both cold and anticipation, Iris unwrapped the gift. Inside the box lay a leather-bound journal. Opening it, she found Bradford's familiar handwriting filling the first page. December 15th, 2014. Tonight I met a young woman at the bus stop on Lakewood. Pregnant, nowhere to go. I brought her home. Tyler was suspicious but polite. Her name is Iris Storm. Something about her eyes. She's terrified but fighting it. Reminds me of myself after Elaine died. Not sure what happens next, but couldn't leave her in the cold. Iris looked up at Bradford, tears blurring her vision. "You kept a journal?" He nodded. Not consistently, just moments that mattered. She turned the page, finding more entries. March. 2015, Iris aced her calculus exam today. She worked so hard for it. The look on her face when she saw her grade, pure joy. Realized I've started looking for reasons to make her smile like that. May 19th, 2015, Imani took her first steps today. 3 wobbly steps from the coffee table to Iris, then collapsed giggling. Iris cried. I pretended not to. This little girl, who isn't mine somehow, is anyway. November 10th, 2016. Iris got accepted to Marygrove. Full scholarship. She deserves this chance. She'll be leaving soon. The house already feels emptier just thinking about it. Tyler asked if I was in love with her. Couldn't answer him. Page after page chronicled their journey. Bradford's perspective, on moments both significant and ordinary. His growing awareness of his feelings for her, captured in private reflections, never intended for her eyes. The final entry, dated just a week earlier, read, December 8th, 2022. Bought the ring today. 8 years since that night at the bus stop. Still can't believe how lucky I am that she chose to stay. Not just that first night, but every day since. Asked Tyler for his blessing. He said, finally. Smart kid. As Iris looked up from the journal, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks, Bradford lowered himself carefully to one knee before her, wincing slightly as his injured leg protested. 8 years ago, a miracle happened here, he said, reaching into his coat pocket and withdrawing a small velvet box. A lost young woman and a broken man found each other, and somehow, against all odds, built something beautiful together. He opened the box to reveal a ring, unlike any Iris had expected. Not a traditional diamond, but a unique design featuring a sapphire surrounded by smaller diamonds set in platinum. The blue stone caught the twinkling lights from the trees, reflecting them like captured stars. This isn't Elaine's ring, Bradford explained, answering her unasked question. I wanted something that was just ours. Something new that represents our beginning, not my past. He took her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. Iris Storm, you've brought light back into a home that had forgotten how to be happy. You've loved my son as your own, created our beautiful daughter, and shown me that life doesn't end with loss. It transforms into something new and unexpected. Will you marry me? Will you make official what we've known in our hearts for years, that we belong together? Yes, she whispered through her tears, then louder. Yes, Bradford Dario, I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, snowflakes began to fall more heavily around them, a perfect echo of the night that had brought them together. Bradford rose to join her on the bench, gathering her into his arms for a kiss that held all. The warmth of their shared history and all the promise of their future. "I never expected you," he murmured against her lips when they finally parted. "You were the detour I never meant to take." "And you," Iris replied, her hand against his cheek, "were the shelter I never knew I was looking for." They remained at the bus stop for a while longer, snow gathering on their shoulders as Bradford showed her specific entries in the journal. Moments she remembered differently from her perspective, small kindnesses she'd forgotten that he had. Treasured observations about Imani's growth that made them both laugh and cry. "We should get back to our daughter," Iris said finally, conscious of the time and the promised gingerbread. "She's going to be ecstatic about this news." Bradford smiled, helping her to her feet. "She already knows. She helped me pick the ring. That child can't keep a secret to save her life. I'm shocked she didn't blurt it out weeks ago." As they drove home through the snowy streets, Iris's new ring caught the passing streetlights, sending prisms of color dancing across the truck's interior. They had come full circle, from that desperate night at a bus stop to this moment of deliberate, chosen commitment. The house glowed with welcome as they pulled into the driveway, Imani's face appearing instantly at the window. The moment they entered, she launched herself at them both. "Did you say yes? Did you like the ring? Can I be the flower girl?" The questions tumbled out in an excited rush. Iris laughed, lifting her daughter into a spin that set them both giggling. "Yes to all three." Tyler, who had apparently arrived while they were gone, appeared from the kitchen with a grin that mirrored his father's. At 22, he had grown into a thoughtful young man who had inherited his mother's creative talent and his father's steady presence. "About time," he said, embracing them both. "I was beginning to think he'd never get up the nerve." The evening transformed into an impromptu celebration, gingerbread making, accompanied by hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps for the adults, phone calls to share the news with close friends, and finally, after Imani had been tucked in with visions of wedding plans dancing in her head, a quiet moment alone in their bedroom. "I have something for you too," Iris said, retrieving a package from her dresser drawer. "I was saving it for Christmas, but now seems right." Bradford unwrapped it to find a shadow box frame containing a bus ticket, the one-way ticket to Detroit. She'd purchased the day before they met, now faded with age. "I kept it all these years," she explained, watching emotion cross his face as he recognized the significance. "It was the last thing I bought with my own money before I met you. I was down to my last $17, and I spent $12 of it on that ticket." Bradford traced the date on the ticket with gentle fingers. "You never told me you were that close to the edge." "I didn't want you to know how desperate I really was," Iris admitted. "I was too proud, but now I want you to have this. A reminder that sometimes the tickets we buy thinking they're taking us one place actually lead us somewhere much better." Bradford set the shadow box carefully on the nightstand before pulling her into his arms. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair, "for the gift, for saying yes, for everything." As their lips met in a kiss that rapidly kindled into something more urgent, Iris felt the cool metal of her new ring against Bradford's neck, a tangible symbol of their journey from a chance encounter to chosen family. 8 years ago, she had been a frightened girl with nowhere to turn. Now she was a woman who had found not just security, but love. Passionate, enduring love that had weathered separation, injury, and the everyday challenges of building a life together. Later, as they lay tangled in sheets and contentment, Bradford traced lazy patterns across her bare shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noting her thoughtful expression. Iris smiled, pressing a kiss to his chest, right above his heart. "That sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns. 8 years ago tonight was the worst moment of my life, until it became the beginning of the best." Bradford pulled her closer, his arms tightening around her with protective tenderness. Full circle, he murmured. Full circle, Iris agreed, nestling against him as the snow continued to fall outside, covering the city of their beginning and their future in a perfect blanket of new possibilities. Chapter 10. The Miracle of Chosen Family. Their first year of marriage unfolded like a beautiful sequel to a story already rich with meaning. Bradford's leg, while never returning to full strength, improved enough for him to accept a management position at the warehouse where he'd once been injured. Iris thrived as lead teacher at the Learning Center, her natural gift with children earning recognition throughout the district. Imani, now 8 and starting 2nd grade, blossomed under the stability of their official family unit. She had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's quiet determination, though Bradford was not her biological father in any legal sense. To Imani, such distinctions were meaningless. Bradford was simply Papa, the man who had always been there, loving her as his own. On their first anniversary, Bradford surprised Iris with papers he'd been preparing secretly for months. "What's this?" she asked, opening the legal envelope after they'd put Imani to bed. "Adoption papers," Bradford replied, his voice thick with emotion. "If you agree, I want to legally adopt Imani as my daughter." Tears filled Iris's eyes as she understood the magnitude of the gesture. "She's already yours in every way that matters." "I know," Bradford said, taking her hand, "but I want it to be official. I want her to have my name, to never question her place in this family." That night, they made love with a passionate tenderness that still amazed them both. How desire could deepen rather than diminish with time. How each touch carried the weight of their shared history and promises kept. The adoption was finalized. 3 months later, Imani Storm officially becoming Imani Storm Dario. The little girl had been ecstatic at the news, though confused about why they needed papers for something she had always known to be true. "But he's already my papa," she had said, brow furrowed in childhood logic. "Why do we need a judge to say so?" "Sometimes, sweetheart," Iris had explained, "the most important truths need to be written down so the whole world knows them too." Tyler graduated from Michigan State with honors, his music degree leading to a position with the Detroit Symphony's youth education program. At 24, he had grown into a thoughtful young man who carried his mother's creativity and his father's integrity. The grief that had marked his adolescence had transformed into a quiet appreciation for the family that had expanded in unexpected ways. During one Sunday dinner, as Bradford and Tyler grilled steaks while Iris and Imani prepared a salad in the kitchen, Tyler broached the subject that had been on his mind. "You know, Dad," he said casually, flipping a steak with practiced ease, "when Mom died, I thought our family was over. I couldn't imagine anything good coming after that." Bradford glanced at his son, hearing the undertone of something important in his voice. "I felt the same way. But look at us now," Tyler continued, gesturing toward the kitchen where Iris's laughter mingled with Imani's excited chatter. "We're not the same family we were, but we're still a family. Better even, because we chose each other." Bradford's throat tightened with emotion. "Your mother would have loved them, you know." "I know," Tyler agreed, surprising Bradford with his certainty. "Mom always said love finds a way. I think this is what she meant." Later that night, as Iris curled against him in bed, Bradford shared Tyler's words with her. "He's right," he murmured into her hair. "We chose each other every step of the way." From that first night at the bus stop, Iris agreed, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Although, if we're being technical, I chose you first," Bradford teased, his hand tracing the familiar curve of her waist. "You were just a passenger in my truck." Iris laughed softly, the sound still his favorite after all these years. "And here I thought I was the one making the brave choice, trusting a stranger with my future." "Maybe that's the miracle," Bradford, suggested voice growing serious, that we kept choosing each other day after day through everything. As they drifted towards sleep wrapped in each other's arms, Bradford reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter on a snowy night to this life filled with purpose and connection. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had transformed into the greatest love story of his life, proving that family wasn't always determined by